Okay, I want you to imagine, just for a second, walking into a shared environment. Think of a school or maybe your current workplace. Everyone is inside the exact same building, right? They're walking down the exact same hallways, smelling that same slightly burnt office coffee, hearing the exact same bells ring, and sitting in the exact same rooms. And yet, despite sharing this identical physical space, everyone in there is living completely different lives. So why is that? Well, it's because they don't process things the same way. They don't think the same way. And crucially, they don't act the same way. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to break down a really simple but honestly an incredibly powerful concept about human behavior and look at how our mindset literally dictates our reality. Here's our quick roadmap for today. We'll be covering the three groups in life, the thinkers, the watchers, the action takers, the ripple effect, and finally, your next step.
All right, let's jump right into section 1, the three groups in life. A shared environment, but totally different realities.
So the foundational premise of our analysis today is actually pretty wild when you think about it. The overall atmosphere, the energy, the big successes, and really the future of any space are entirely determined by which of these three groups people fall into. Like we said, we all share this exact same physical reality. The halls, the bells, the classrooms, it's completely uniform. But internally, our realities diverge completely. We take that exact same external environment and run it through completely different thoughts and actions, which ultimately leads to entirely different lives.
Moving on to section 2. Let's talk about our first group, the thinkers. This is where ideas stay inside. If you could somehow plug into the internal monologue of a thinker, it would probably sound a bit like a racing engine. Just constant questions. What should I do? Wait, what if I do it wrong? What if I fail? Oh no, what if people laugh at me? The mind of a thinker is just always spinning. Say they get a new project. They'll overthink it so intensely that they'll literally spend 3 weeks just trying to pick the right font for the email. Or maybe a question is asked in a meeting, and they absolutely know the answer, but their hand stays down. Why? Because that paralyzing little thought creeps in. What if I somehow say it wrong? And honestly, this is a huge tragedy, because these individuals have immense potential. I mean, they are incredibly intelligent. They've got brilliant ideas and massive dreams. But their fear of failure acts like a brick wall. The thought completely overtakes the action.
And that leads to their biggest problem. They have this rich, massive internal world, but zero external output. Now, don't get me wrong. Thinking isn't a bad thing. Actually, scratch that. Acting without thinking usually leads to a mess. But only thinking, that leaves you frozen exactly where you are. Just imagine someone comes up with this brilliant idea for an environmental project, but then they spend weeks agonizing over it. Will people even join? Will management approve it? Am I just going to get mocked? Days turn into weeks. The idea never actually leaves their head. And because of that, out in the real world, absolutely nothing changes.
All right, section 3 brings us to our next group, the watchers. These are the folks who never take the field. For this one, I want you to picture a massive football stadium. Up in the stands, you've got thousands of people. They're watching every single move, shouting, and endlessly criticizing. Oh, come on, I would have done that way better. Or how do you miss that easy shot? But then look down on the pitch. There are only a very few people actually playing the game. Now, the watchers in the stands, they are super observant. They'll notice exactly who succeeds, who fails, who's vocal, and who stays quiet. But here's the fundamental truth of the matter. The game is only ever changed by those actually sweating down on the pitch. It is never changed by the thousands sitting safely up in the stands.
Now, look, observation is definitely educational. You can absolutely learn a lot just by watching other people make mistakes and figure out how to succeed. But here is the harsh reality. You can learn by watching, for sure, but you cannot write your own story by watching. If your entire strategy is just to watch, you're going to spend your whole life being a spectator to other people's narratives, and you'll never end up creating your own.
Which perfectly sets up section 4, the action takers.
This is all about starting the process.
So, this brings us to our final and definitely most dynamic group, the action takers. These are the individuals who actually make things happen. They aren't just sitting around hoarding ideas, and they certainly aren't just critiquing from the sidelines. But hey, there is a massive misconception about this group that we really need to clear up right away. Action takers are not fearless, and they are not perfect. They overthink things, and guess what? They get scared too. They also have those moments of, man, what if I can't actually do this? But here is the true definition of courage. It's not the magical absence of fear. It is the act of walking forward despite being totally afraid. The action taker doesn't wait until they know every single variable perfectly. They don't wait for a guaranteed round of applause. They just take that first step anyway.
Passive people tend to observe things from a safe distance, usually waiting for a guaranteed result or just assuming that anyone who succeeds got lucky. But action takers? They don't wait. Their focus is 100% on initiating the process. If they're struggling with a tough subject at school or a new software at work, they don't just throw their hands up and accept failure. They say, "Okay, I can learn this." And then they go ask someone for help, or they put in the practice at home. They put all their energy into the action, rather than obsessing over an immediately perfect outcome.
Because, success isn't usually one giant cinematic leap. It's actually the accumulation of tiny, almost invisible steps. It's deciding to wake up a little bit early. It's sitting down to solve just one more question. It's having the guts to ask a teacher or a boss for help. It's simply choosing to try again after totally messing up. Stepping up for a project, helping out a friend. When you look at these actions individually, they look incredibly small, trivial, almost. But over time, stacking these tiny steps together is exactly what completely transforms a person's life.
And that brings us to Section 5, the ripple effect, where we see how courage and action are actually contagious.
So far, we've really just been looking at individuals. But let's zoom out and see how this plays out collectively. Because action, and inaction for that matter, are highly, highly contagious. When an action taker decides to make a move, they aren't just changing their own life. They literally change the energy of the entire room. And honestly, that is the essence of true leadership. It's not just marching out in front and leaving everybody else behind in your dust. True leadership is actively helping other people walk right alongside you. When you take action, you don't look down your nose at the thinkers or the watchers. Everyone is moving at their own pace. Some people just need a little extra courage or a bit of support. The absolute best kind of action taker is the one who inspires someone else to finally step onto the pitch with them.
Because it's true. Everything is contagious. Fear? Definitely contagious. But courage? Also contagious. Laziness spreads like wildfire. But you know what? So does hard work. Complaints are incredibly toxic and contagious. But here's the good news. So are solutions. Think about it. If everyone in a room just sits around complaining, the atmosphere gets so heavy, right? If everyone just watches, the room goes completely dead silent. If everyone only thinks, all those brilliant ideas just vanish into thin air. But if just one or two people decide to be action takers, if just one person raises their hand or says out loud, "Hey, I think we can do this," the whole room suddenly jolts to life. Because suddenly everybody else is thinking, "Wait, maybe I can do this too."
Which leads us to our final section, Section 6, your next step. So, which step are you going to take? Okay, so we've talked about the shared environment, the paralyzing overthinking, the quiet watchers in the stands, and the courageous action takers on the field. Now, I want to bring the focus entirely back to you and how you can break your own inertia. Here are some concrete, real-world things you can do today. Go start that assignment you've been putting off for 3 weeks. Just open the document. Go talk to that teacher or manager you've been avoiding. Make peace with an old friend. Begin that new goal you've been daydreaming about. Remember, your life isn't usually changed by some massive, dramatic movie moment. It's changed by taking small, real steps. You aren't going to change your entire life in one single day, but the transformation begins the exact day you decide to take that first tiny step.
If you recognize yourself as a thinker, remember, your thoughts are your superpower, but you absolutely have to let them out into the world. If you're more of a watcher, that's okay. Keep learning, but realize that it is finally time to step onto the field. And honestly, moving from one group to the next all starts with making one incredibly simple yet powerful mental shift. You just have to say to yourself, "I can try this." Because look, denying yourself the chance to even try, that just means you've already lost. But the person who actually tries, they either win or they learn.
Thinking is valuable. Watching is educational. But movement is the only thing that actually changes your life. Sometimes the greatest transformations in history started with the steps so small nobody else even noticed it happening. And who knows, maybe you are the exact person meant to take that step today. So I want to leave you with this final thought to just sit with and reflect on. What step will you take today?